Welcome. These will be my thoughts on the 2004 Sci-Fi Channel miniseries 5 Days to Midnight, stylized with a number 5 instead of the F. I am not 100% sure, but I can imagine this might be rated around TV-14. This video will be. There will be spoilers for this episode, not for any of the remaining ones, and I have quite the soft spot for this miniseries. Yeah, we're hitting the embarrassing truth immediately. If you have not yet watched it and you're wondering whether or not to watch this show, over the next 5 weeks, this one count included, I will do all 5 episodes of the miniseries, and then I'm going to do a review with 0 spoilers. So, yeah, I would recommend waiting for that particular one, and then going back and watching these. And I suppose that, yeah, honestly, I think I'm just very briefly going to start with, I got this on DVD. I told you this was going to get embarrassing. I bought it because, and I think this is something upon which many of us can agree, the hook sounds phenomenal, and yeah, it's, I think the very first viewing, I was actually fairly happy with it, and then on repeat viewings, which I've done, this is not the first time I've watched it since since my initial viewing, I came to really appreciate how wonderfully cheesy it is. I think this might be the one Sci-Fi Channel thing where I'm like, you know what, okay, I like that. I could watch that. But it's possible I've just been unfortunate with some of the other ones. I'm not above, like, enjoying something that's technically probably kind of bad, but wasn't Harpy's Sci-Fi Channel? I think I watched that one and I was like, you know what, I think I'm good. So, if you continue watching this video, I am going to spoil this entire episode, and I would definitely recommend, going into this show not knowing anything at all. So, with that said, yeah, I am going to try to keep this more or less chronological in order that the scenes appear in the episode. And once again, I am not spoiling any of the upcoming episodes. Honestly, I have managed to forget most of it, but it has also been years since I last watched it. I remember 1 or 2 things about the finale, which I'm not going to discuss before I talk about the finale in my video specifically on that. Did I mention that the episode's called Day 1? I forget. Anyway, but yeah. I totally forget if the near-death experience ends up actually being justified by anything, or if it was just that they wanted to set up, he might die, and didn't have a good way to do it. I don't know. Anyway, so let's see. Yeah, we open on her waking up, I think, or was that the first thing we see? Oh, wait, right. First, we have the actual, yeah, JT being shot. And, from right away, we have these wonderful, the frame rate is all messed up, which is one of those really cheap ways to make something seem slightly more visually interesting. And yeah, there's just enough there that, so apparently these did air. I forget if it was all of them, but looking at it, at least these first 2 episodes aired on the same night. So, but hypothetically, if one, like I'm doing now, were to watch 1 episode per week, you'd have a lot to try to dissect in that opening. And I really do appreciate this doesn't really mess around. It's not like easing us into, because, like, either you already know the concept and it's why you're here, and they're telling you this really is what the show is about. We're not, this was not false advertising, or you, I don't know, fell asleep watching Sci-Fi Network. Pretty sure that happens a lot. And, suddenly you're like half awake and you see this opening, and then you decide to more than likely go back to sleep. But hypothetically, maybe you choose to pay attention to this one. And but yeah, the frantic movement, and he turns around and is shot, and now it's up to him and the audience, him in the present day and the audience, to find out who shot him and why. And just, yeah, I don't know. When I got this, I was real into like these crime mystery, not like literally CSI, but like CSI if it wasn't. See, that was not my kind of cheese, at least not back when I got this. But something like Law and Order or something, Without a Trace, that kind of thing. Trying to solve, and then science fiction. So yeah, I think that does bring us to, yeah, and then Jesse wakes up, and I will say, so obviously I'm not saying this is like good technically, but I do appreciate that it doesn't really mess around for forever. At least not this episode. I forget if it happens in a later episode, but so far, this episode, there's a lot of character, there's a lot of backstory. It's not all subtly delivered, but yeah, the it goes by kind of fast. But I did see at least one poster on the wall of Jesse's room. It looks like she's a fellow fan of Fran Drescher. And the yeah, he gives her a birthday present in the morning in addition to one later, and a riddle, which she says it's too early in the morning for, not I don't like your riddles, so it's just, yeah, I do quite like, they really do feel very authentic as father and daughter. And yeah, this thing of mom's gone, and so yeah, the he's very, very protective of Jesse. And it adds to, like, obviously he already doesn't want to die, but even more so, like, he would hate for his daughter to be an orphan. She might fight crime, and that's very dangerous. And the yeah, with the laser pointer, we get some visual exposition. She pans it across various, yeah, there's picture, at least one picture of the two of them, right. And is this also where we see a picture of all three? Oh wait, no, I guess not, because death date and birth date for two different characters happen on the same day, right? And this did apparently originally indeed air on June 7th, just like the episode is. Yeah, so that's quite a good, yeah, good gimmick. They're playing the gimmick all the way, rather. And the yeah, right now I forget what it was, but there was definitely some other stuff in the room that helps tell us who she is and what their relationship is and such. And let's see, they yeah, not long after, he places another puzzle piece on a jigsaw that would make Jigsaw from Saw go like, I mean, I want to play a game, but this is pretty extreme. And she's also nailing it, which, like, yeah, is necessarily subtle, but yeah, they're both geniuses, and the and have a really great relationship together. And I think This was also something I feel like the actress playing Jessie does a good job. You know, I suppose you don't see it that much in this particular episode, but you know, over the course of the show, from what I recall, you see her in more like different emotional states, and yeah, she does well. If I understand correctly, I don't think I've watched anything else of hers, but if I understand correctly, she did keep acting after this, and this was early in her career. I guess I don't have to say early in her career because she's like 10, but I totally understand, you know, someone watching this and being like, we should cast her in something, if that is indeed what happened. And right, and I don't have that much of an opinion on Timothy Hutton, but I think he does well here. And it was cool seeing, I'm pretty sure, my wrists are too sore to check right now, but I'm pretty sure that's Ezra Dax, Nicole de Boer in the party. She's one of the people reluctant to, you know, the silly string guns, I think they're called. Anyway, I think that does bring us to... So yeah, he gets her to school, and then, you know, driving away from there, we have the, you know, one of the, you know, those steel rods, one of the inanimate carbon rods falls, and, you know, I adore the cheese of this show. It is rich, creamy, and delicious. We see the camera go around him 360 degrees as like the math and the physics are in the background, and then it transitions and he's like explaining it to his class. I gotta say, the days of college where the professor came in and tried to have us all try to figure out why they didn't die that morning, they were some of the more interesting ones. But I'm joking. Technically, I didn't go to college. I went to something not dissimilar from it. But let's see. I think, yeah, and just the various elements, you know, you see it, you know, headed down towards the car. You see the dog run across, and he, you know, yeah. And yeah, this CG, like, I mean, that's one of the things when people talk about, you know, Sci-Fi Network, you know, that's one of the things that they, in the things I've seen, I believe it's more than just these two, this and Harpies. In each of the things I've seen of theirs, they just push the CG too far, you know? And it's like, I get it. It's difficult. I don't know exactly how you would do that with, like, oh, okay. I don't think in 2004 they would have done it with stop motion, even though technically that is an option. But yeah, you know, it's like, maybe write it or film it, I guess, so that it's one or the other, possibly both, so that you don't have to see it for quite so long. I don't know. That was also the let's see, the shell casing was also wonderfully cheesy in the opening where he gets shot. And I think, yeah, and the fact that we see a picture taken of his dead body and then, you know, pans out to see, yep, definitely was a picture. And a little later in the episode, we do see that picture again. But I think that brings us to the I guess now that I've said that you know, at least some of the cast I'm really happy about, I guess I should acknowledge, yeah, so obviously, I believe his name is Randy Quaid. More recently, I believe he was referred to as MAGA Santa because I mean, I think he thought he was cooking, but not sure anybody else thought that. But yeah, I'm not making any excuses for Randy Quaid. But you know, I try not to only watch things that only has people that, you know, have never done or said something as baffling as that video. If anybody else still even remembers that, it was years ago. But yeah, I think the case for such was laid out very nicely by Council of Geeks in their fairly recent video. I'm going to see if I can remember. Let's see. I believe it is called Your Media Diet Does Not Define You. Now, I think that pretty much gets us to, yeah, I like that Jessie, you know, she gets in, yeah, she sees the hole and she's like, I'm glad this happened after you dropped me off. JT, what do you let her watch that she's developed that morbid of a sense of humor? Holy crap. But the let's see. Yeah, and him being such a dad, you know, with dad jokes of like, "Oh no, my finger is stuck in the hole." Just yeah. And I think that might be when they go. Let's see. No, yeah. So he's in, you know, he's teaching class, and someone else that I'm not sure I was super familiar with when I first watched this, Hamish Linklater. Very cool. You know, right now when I think of him, I mostly think of Legion. Wonderful show, significantly better than this one. But the yeah, you know, he points out you were saved by an active dog, and you know, JT Preckley has to chase him out. He's like, "You're not in this class. Get out." And let's see, yeah. So later he comes by and, you know, it's outside of office hours. He's talking to a professor that's not dealing with that particular, yeah, just wow. And I think that does, yeah, and we have the bit where it seems like, did he maybe get JT's key to double it for the laptop thing, you know? And I think that does bring us to when he, yeah, so he's driving Jesse back from school, and you know, we see the unsurprise party, you know, being readied. I 100% did not remember that Giancarlo Esposito was in this. Like, holy crap. Were these just not big names back then, or? But anyway, the maybe they were doing someone a favor. I don't know. Yeah, and he, you know, he fakes, oh, you know, I can't find the key, and she's like, let's just get this over with. I know that, you know, and she opens the door and says, surprise, before anyone else has a chance to. This genuinely, yeah. And let's see. Oh wait, hold on. I accidentally skipped. Yeah, so before that, we have them visit the grave. And I really appreciate that, like, for as cheesy and, you know, like, speaking of, you know, we had that bit where he looks at the photo and it turns into a magic photo and, you know, shows the past. Or maybe that's just where they put the TV. I don't know how else it would be humanly possible. And the, let's see. Yeah, you know, once they're actually in the graveyard, it's not super cheesy. It is one of those things where as soon as the actual, you know, I guess let's call it the case, because the case, because technically it's not a laptop, even though it looks like a futuristic laptop. I actually forgot that it wasn't. I was thinking like, so iPad, but the tablet. I'm not trying to get any customers for Apple here. Not a fan. In general, not a fan of corporations. But the yeah, you know, they do that thing where like the special effect is for the viewers, because like apparently that shockwave, like obviously, you know, they needed to do something. They needed to highlight that something happened here that we don't understand quite yet. And you know, I mean, by the end of this episode, the characters don't know, but we, the audience, know. We saw it pop in like that. So yeah, there's some kind of timey-wimey situation going on here. And they needed to really make that, something, but then the characters apparently don't realize this, like, release of energy. I guess shockwave might be excessive, but yeah. And let's see. Yeah, really appreciate him pointing out, I don't know if this is safe. Don't go so close. Do stand so close to me, but don't to the laptop. And, she points out it has your name on it. And yeah, so they go back to the house and the party, and he's, putting the case away. And I did really like that, Claudia, so we find out, it's 2 months of flirting. She already knows him so well, and there's this, I like the little thing of like, so his wife died on this exact day, not today, but 10 years ago. Maybe you didn't know that, just this little subtle of like, I mean, I'm sure you didn't mean to be, and she's just like, no, I knew. And, yeah, for like a fraction of a second, we think, so she's kind of morbid too. I guess it's just, it goes with the Neumeier family. She's going to fit right in. But no, instead, yeah, she knew that he would like to do something that fun. And I'm not sure I've ever myself had, I don't even know if we have those around here, but they do look a lot of fun, those silly string gun things. Yeah, but before, and the thing of, she's like, well, maybe we should ask him, and then immediately he's firing them. So it's like, well, asked and answered, Your Honor. And yeah, I forgot that this show had Giancarlo Esposito covered in silly string and acting like he's, it's just, yeah, that's very fun. And let's see. So he is that when? Yeah. So he talks to Brad, and he's I like the bit where Brad is like trying to get the thing loaded and then accidentally, shoots. Wasn't there a Republican prominent who did that, and that's why they wear an eye patch? Or am I thinking of something else? I know, it sounds like something someone made up. It sounds satirical. Speaking of, I don't always plug multiple videos in one of my videos, but Queen Coke Francis did a fantastic video on the Young Republican Convention, I think it's called. It's the title is something like, so how was your Young Republican Convention? And the let's see, yeah, JT figures out the code and opens it and sits there looking at it, and then suddenly Jesse is there and is like, oh, you better hide it. And the let's see, yeah, I thought it worked well that I'm not going to give away who. All I will say is by the end of the 5th episode, you will indeed know who is behind what's going on in the show, or some of it at least. I remember feeling like it answered enough that it was, but yeah, makes sense that Carl, yeah, like he said, you're gonna go, it's gonna blow your mind when you see what I did. And he's not great at boundaries. And I love that after he remembers, oh, right, now I know why the professor is sad. He like spells it out like, oh, that's right. This is the day where 10 years ago when your daughter was born, the love of your life died tragically. I don't know what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm sure that's all you can think about this entire day. You're probably completely emotionally devastated. Now, anyway, would you sign this for me? And I think that brings us to the, yeah, appropriate to when this came out. She gets a PS2. Honestly, I wonder if there are like anyone watching it today and not thinking about that the show is 21 and a half years old and are like, why are they so happy about PS2? What are they up to by now? 5 or something like that? Anyway, I think that does bring us to... Yeah, and she does indeed get, as she, said in the morning, the telescope, I think it is. It's not a microscope. It's not a periscope. It's not a horoscope. I'm pretty sure it's a telescope. And then we have the, yeah, he feels like he has to look into this, and right now I forget if he went directly to Carl or if he started by going to Brad, but he certainly goes to Carl, so let's go with that. Yeah, I think that might be, yeah, he figures this must be Carl, so he talks to, and Carl's not letting him in, and there's like a motion sensor there and everything, and, despite the camera, he's acting like he doesn't know who's there. Or wait, is it automated maybe? I guess we didn't see him in there. It's possible that that's what... Yeah, because it started like repeating after a while. Yeah, that's I think that's what it is. And it's also like, wouldn't Carl just let him in, especially if he did this? You would want to brag, but if he's not in, then it's... And yeah, I thought they did a good job on the production of the actual, he opens the case and he's looking at the pictures, and there's just enough there that we, the audience, like by the end of this episode, we already have a lot to theorize about. Claudia's a suspect, Brad's a suspect, what was his name, something Remmer is a suspect, everyone's a suspect. And the little details, Claudia wasn't at the funeral, Sarkowski didn't attend the autopsy, these little things that are like, what's going on? I mean, we don't know Sarkowski yet, but we only just meet him here. Yeah, saying yet is not a spoiler. It's hopefully by the end of this episode, you feel like, yeah, we're probably going to see Sarkowski again, And I thought it worked well that, when he goes to Sarkowski, he hasn't seen all the evidence, because, like, once, he finds the bullet and the shell casing, that's a little bit more, because, like, up to that, okay, so he's got, like, forged documents and photoshopped photos, like, what's the big deal, And I do also like the detail that, before he goes to Sarkowski, he goes to Brad. And, it's this thing of like, yeah, he's, JT says, I'll just go to the campus cops. Brad says, you should go to the real cops. And, Sarkowski says, this is not something for real cops, just like, yeah, it feels like a very authentic distinction between how a civilian and a cop would look at these two things. Yeah. Sarkowski just has no luck this night. First he has to, he's asked to investigate a murder, and he's like, no, this was, it's death by donut. And then, he has to deal with JT, and just, yeah. Now, I guess it is appropriate that the cop, I'm not giving away whether the cop himself on the show is good or bad, but, as someone who's not fond of cops myself, I appreciate that it's Randy Quaid, although I'm not sure he was thought of particularly negatively. I think he was just thought of as like a goofball. Didn't he do those vacation movies with can't believe I'm blanking on the actor's name, but he also played Fletcher. I did watch the Fletcher movies. I remember liking those. I don't think I was ever the biggest fan of that actor though, but no, I have not watched the vacation movies. Just never happened. I don't necessarily have like some problem with it. I mean, other than Randy Quaid, perhaps. Anyway, the what was the other thing? Let's see. There's definitely another thing about the yeah, I did like Brad pointing out, social security number, like this is kind of serious, and the yeah, the Sarkovsky from inside the pastrami place guiding them as like, okay, apparently needing to micromanage the donuts should go over there. Okay, one of the donuts should go to that cop, another one to that cop. Like, why am I having to explain to cops how to eat donuts? And I do appreciate, so as mentioned, not a big fan of Randy Quaid, but the wait, do I have the wrong brother? Is Randy the other? You know what? From now on, he is Quaid until until my wrists aren't too sore to look up. Anyway, the Quaid in this, I do appreciate. I mean, he is playing it serious, and personally, watching this, I didn't really have a problem taking his performance seriously, compared to anything else in the episode, really. And let's see, yeah, appreciate that he calls home. He lets them know that he'll be late, and the fact that she answers the phone with this, silly, like, what did she say? Psychiatric hotline or something like that. Just like, yeah. And Jesse puts another puzzle piece on, and then, Claudia's like, don't tell me it's easy. And, Jesse points out, don't look at the picture, look at the shape. And I have heard that is how you deal with, those jigsaw puzzles that have I gotta admit, when I was a kid doing jigsaw puzzles, I preferred the ones where it was like, okay, from looking at the box, I can clearly see where, what the final picture is supposed to look at, and then obviously put away the box, and then you try to reconstruct it from memory or, intuition or such. But one of the ones that has that much that's the same color and such, that's anyway, yeah, and the bonding between Jesse and Claudia, and he even asks, like, are you okay with Claudia? And she's like, sure. And that is, it varies a lot. There are some kids who are very happy about, the idea of their, one of their parents getting together with someone new. Anyway, I think that brings us, let's see. So he goes back to he goes back home, and I did really appreciate, there's the thing about, well, you don't have a green Jeep, you don't have a blue parka, and then he goes home, and the let's see, yeah, the um yes, so the part where the yeah, she got, JT a present somewhere off in the, off screen. Cartman is whining about, when do I get my present, ma'am? And it's a blue parka. And I did really appreciate he actually tells her. He doesn't just like say, there's nothing wrong. And, as soon as she learns the name Bremer as one of the suspects, you can tell there's something, yeah. And yeah, I'm not gonna spoil, and not just because I don't remember, But yeah, there's clearly something there. Who is Bremer? How does she know him? And why is she, because like up until that point, it wasn't necessarily that she would, they're talking about like, I don't know, a lot of parkas are blue. What's, and, and she points out, Brad's your brother-in-law. Why would he want to kill you? I think you just answered your own question. And I think that does... I do think they do a decent job of, considering the budget and everything, the camera work is decently dynamic and not entirely incompetent. I mean, it's not, it's not Brian De Palma or something, but let's see, but yeah, and she's also not telling JT or the audience exactly what's the deal with this Bremer guy, so yeah, like, is the, yeah, there's something there, and obviously by the end of the episode, ideally we are thinking like, what's going on there? We watch more to find out. I think that's pretty much it for the episode. I thought it worked well that they every so often focus on clocks, and yeah, 5 days to midnight, which is also just such a wonderfully silly title. I mean, obviously it's midnight each of those days also, but just, it's evocative. Like, you hear that title, you see the silly stylization, and maybe you're intrigued. I think that does cover the entire thing. So the yeah, I thought it worked well. These we get just enough to go off of to theorize ourselves, but not so much that we're likely to deduce exactly what's going on, what's going to happen. But yeah, Sarkovsky says a couple of cop cliche things, and it's like, now the audience has something to work with. Although I guess if you watch this when it originally aired, that's just for like the commercial break or something. Yeah, I think that covers all that I have for this one. I'm going to real quick mentally fast forward through the episode. Let's see. I liked when Jesse runs up the stairs and looks out over, to keep an eye on them, and they look up and she's like acting like, what? I'm not listening in. And yeah, the fact that the three of them really get along, like, there's just enough conflict elsewhere, like the central concept by itself, has us like, wow, what's gonna happen here, and it also heightens the tension, the raises the stakes, because like, not only would he die if this really does happen, as the case says it will, but he would leave his daughter an orphan, and Claudia would also lose him, so yeah, very nicely done. And I guess that does pretty much... I suppose I'll briefly note, I thought the bathtub bit was, it's one of those things I've talked about before. I'm not the biggest fan of like completely gratuitous stuff, but I think if you have sexualization, it should communicate something to the audience. Ideally, I understand the appeal of just the stuff that isn't. And if that's something you really like in your media, that's, I'm not judging. Personally, I prefer when media is conveying something. And here I felt like they landed just on the side of that. Because, that's, yeah, their relationship is that good. And it also tells us, there's definitely something about this Bremer, because, like, it looked like the situation was developing, and then she catches that name on a list of suspects of, who killed her current, partner, and she is distraught. So that, yeah. And I also really appreciated, he's not like whining about, oh no, I don't get to be with her. He's just like, no, I'll put it away. And she says more than once, we'll have to do this some other time, and he accepts it. He shouldn't necessarily have had, she shouldn't have had to tell him multiple times. He should have accepted it the moment that she said no, but at least it is still, yeah. Yeah, I think that's everything. And, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I appreciate this idea of, yeah, he has just these few days to solve this, so that, yeah. And we did indeed see an entire day here. The first thing we saw that wasn't the glimpse of the one possible future from your point of view. I don't know tech. As soon as we saw that, yeah, it's time for her to get up in the morning, and it's a school day, so, it's early. And it ends, late in the evening. It's dark outside and such. And yeah, I really appreciate that, this thing of like, well, if you're gonna get home late, I'll stay up late, school night or not. We are, finishing up this telescope. And as soon as he comes home, even though he's like tired and it's been a lot, he helps finish the telescope. That genuinely is very sweet. And yeah, one thing I suppose I will say, one line that hits a little different, Sarkovsky says, "Do you know the last time that I didn't show up for an autopsy? Neither do I." I mean, is it possible that you just don't have the world's best memory? Like, I don't. I don't remember the last time I did an autopsy, but then again, I guess I'm not a cop.